Okay, everybody, welcome to episode 3 of Playground to Premiership. I have the pleasure of hosting today my former teammate, Adi Viveash. Welcome, Adi. Thanks so much for taking the time to come in to the podcast for us here at ACE. Obviously, just a little bit of an introduction. I actually, I've got to do this little intro, because obviously where we are in Walsall, and which camera we're going for? We're going for that one. This is where I got to meet you, Viv. Obviously, young lad. I think it was 96, 97 year, when you were captain of Walsall, I think, and I was coming through, making my debut. As Pete said, who's hosting from Circle Media, this was the year where you scored lots of goals. But introduction in how I know you was Walsall. I was a young lad coming through. You was our leader, one of many leaders there, and obviously a centre-back who went on to have a really good career at Walsall and on to Reading. But obviously I've followed your coaching journey, and we've kept in touch through player WhatsApp groups and different meets, as everybody does in football. So it's an absolute pleasure that we've got someone with your background that can hopefully give people an insight into your journey and then the pathway of young players that you've had the experience to do. So thanks again for coming on.
You're welcome.
In terms of an introduction, as we always do, what I like to do is to bring it all back. We say from playground to Premiership. So just start with a little bit. Obviously, we're going to speak about your coaching career in the main, but your development. When did your passion for football come, Viv? When did you start?
I think my passion for football came from my sibling rivalry, if you like, with my brother. He's a year older, but he was a Man United fan. Probably 7, he was 8. And I was a Liverpool fan. So that rivalry was massive then in the game. And I think we took it out onto the grass behind our house and had quite a few little 50-50s, which obviously I got renowned for later on in life. But it probably started very early. And just love watching the cup final with my dad and really engaged in everything football. I played for local teams from 11 years of age. Not any younger than that, interestingly, but played in teams, representative teams, area teams, played with kids, as we were talking about earlier, played with kids 5, 6 years older. That certainly, you got it about a bit. You got to learn how to protect yourself, use your body. Definitely helped me later on in life. And then I went on to, like most people, I suppose, get into the school team. I was a striker then. That's why I started out as a number 9. For those who played with me will probably laugh at this, but I used to be really quick and score a lot of goals. And I did. I played for Brinkworth, which was a local team where I first got saw by Swindon schoolboys scouts, playing the school team. And then I went to trials, and at the under 13, the trial didn't go as well as I'd hoped. I didn't quite make the last 20, but as I said, you have these sliding doors moments in your life, and the goalkeeper, Russell Hemsworth, his name was my friend from Wootton Bassett, he got in the group. I went to watch him play in the first game with his parents, had my boots in the back of his car, and a couple of the strikers didn't turn up for whatever reason, and the coach added me into the group. They were 2-0 down at half-time. I came on at half-time, scored 3, and without that, it may have been a different story, but obviously played for Swindon all the way through then, joined from school at nearly 17. I was the oldest in my group. Lou Macari was the manager. They were League 2 at the time. They used to just run all over teams. It was a brilliant education. 6.5-mile runs on a Thursday before a Saturday match, and we'd have to play in the youth team. Minibus to games, like most people, nothing, didn't have anything. But I was at Swindon, I had some brilliant managers for different reasons. Lou Macari, Ozzy Ardiles, Glenn Hoddle, different people, amazing players in their own right. Steve McMahon obviously was a hero of mine, a bit different after I'd worked under him, but, as a Liverpool fan. So I worked under some great managers and they taught me a lot. I took a lot from all of them. And then, as you rightly say, I joined Walsall in 95, actually. Halfway through that season, I think it was, or the November, playing a trial game at the Bescott, and obviously had 5.5 amazing years there, where we achieved that incredible promotion to the Championship. And again, worked under, God rest him, Chris Nichol, an incredible person for me in my development. Ozzy was the first person who said to me, Adi, I think you could play centre-back. And I did have a little chuckle at the time, but he obviously saw something in me with the movement. The electric pace had disappeared. But I read the game very well, and I think I had a good understanding. And, when I came to Walsall, it was probably around the time as well where you and the likes of yourself and Clive Platt and Dean Keats, Michael Ricketts, these exciting young group. We had Ian Roper, exciting players, great for Walsall's future at that time. That was the time also where I thought to myself, I'd make a good youth team coach. It was the time when I thought about it, because I found it quite natural to try and help, to guide and to lead, I suppose. Great years at Walsall. Then I went to Reading. Unfortunately, we played Walsall playoff final the first year I was there. And,
I nearly said double promotion winner, but you'd have jumped over the table at me, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and it didn't go as planned, but we got promotion the next year. I did 3 years there.
Was that under Pardew?
Alan Pardew was excellent. Yeah, an excellent manager, very ahead of his time. I certainly took from him into coaching some things in terms of the structure of sessions, the timings that you use. I think he was above his time with that. Obviously, like I say, you take things from everybody really, but you want to be your own person. But I went back to Swindon at 34 and Andy King was the manager then. And for 17 games, it was great. And we were flying second in the league and doing great. And I never played again. It was a bit of a strange period. And that was it, really. I went to Aldershot, went to Kidderminster with Jan Mulby. I really enjoyed that. Played again with Keatsy. I went
Dean Bennett there?
Not sure. Ian Foster was there.
Okay, yeah.
On the wing. And, 2 loan spells. Really enjoyed it. It was great. And then I went to Swindon Town, which was in the Southern Premier League. And I played for 18 months. And it was like the nice thing about going full circle from having to pay your mortgage, to fight, to get your contracts. I just played for fun. And I was playing with people that were working in Honda.
Did you relax anymore?
I kicked a few young lads. I mean, I'll never forget my last game. So obviously I'd done 18 months and then I left to go and do my coaching, passed my A licence. And then I was invited back to be like the player manager, and it worked at the time. It suited, but as player manager, I didn't play many games, but we played Hitchin away. And this little young striker, I mean, he was electric at that stage. I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going in the channels now. And I said to him, he was giving it a bit, and he scored. We lost 2-1, but I scored our goal. And I shook his hand after. I said, mate, you've just finished my career today. I said, that's the last time I'll be playing. He went, seriously? Our manager's a Reading fan. I need to tell him. So we had a bit of banter, and that was me. I'd gone to 37, and then it was time to think about. I was doing normal jobs.
Yeah, it's great to speak there. Though, there's a couple of points because, as I've said to you, Viv, obviously it's raining now and nobody's here. But you came in when camp was just finishing. And I explained to you with Ace, we're pre-academy fundamentally, and then foundation, and we'll talk about your Chelsea days. You understand, we don't really go into the development phase too much, but our thing is that young, starting to love the game, getting your foot on the ball, the environment, learning your way. And what's really nice or interesting for lots of people who listen is you didn't play, the things I touched upon there is most of your first formative years were unstructured. You didn't play in structure maybe till around 11. Grasping opportunities when they come, you never know when they'll happen. So disappointment of not making the team at 13, lots of people probably wouldn't have travelled to even watch the team, let alone take the bag with them. And obviously you've took that opportunity and come on and scored. You never mentioned it in that, but we spoke about it. That adversity that a year into your scholarship, or YTS it had been called then, you were brought in and they sort of said, this might not work out for you. And rather than take that the wrong way, you bounce back. So there's a few points on there on your youth career that I think is really interesting. And then when we speak about your coaching, Lou Macari, Glenn Hoddle. Who was the other one at Swindon? Ozzy Ardiles,
yeah.
Chris Nichol,
Yeah.
Ray
Alan
Graydon that we didn't
Ray
mention.
Graydon, yeah.
Alan Pardew. So like you said, you've obviously got your own coaching style and methods, but loads of different people that you probably learned upon along the way. So what a great journey you had in terms of your youth development. Parental, because we talk about like the parent journey is important for me. How was your parents with you on your journey? It's the only thing we didn't touch on.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously came from a very working class background. My dad would work in the day, he'd come in, and then my mum would go to work at night.
Right.
So for a long period, it was tough.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot of money, but there was a lot of love in our house, but we didn't have a lot of money. So I think resilience, they keep using this word, but I think it's embedded in you. And I think, it's certain things that happen during your life you take and you remember them back, whether that's in football or the journey that you'll go on. You'll find your path wherever you end up in the end. Resilience is a big word that keeps coming back to me on my journey. But my dad was my harshest critic.
Right.
My mum came to every school game. She'd come on the bus, sit with the parents and be there. Typical mum, okay, never mind today. The same lady who was in the county ground when I played for Swindon early on, and the fans obviously were letting their displeasure be known about her son, would turn round and threaten them with her umbrella and things. But these are the sorts of things that happen. But my dad, very, very harsh, I felt at the time, on me, God rest him, but he was almost to the point of not sure praise he felt was the right way. And I think, you have to be careful of that as a parent. Obviously, I'm a parent myself, but you have to be careful of when and where you give it and how you give it. And I think I learned that certainly from my dad to take into the coaching, that I wanted to be a person who, was firm as he was. But when somebody did something really well, I wanted them to know they did something really well. So when I never felt that I was given that part of the critique.
Right.
I only got the critique of, I may have set up, I don't know, we'd won 5-1, but the goal was my fault.
Yeah.
Things like that. And I think these are the things that stick in your mind. He obviously, I'm not having a go at him. I'm just saying that's how it felt.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty tough upbringing in terms of that. But again, it helped shape me. It made me who I was to get over 2 broken legs and my career nearly ending and all these sliding doors moments, which carried on into coaching. So I think as a parent, you've got your children, especially the ones here at your academy, every child is different. Every child has their own identity. Every child will be made up in a different way. Their components of their brain are made differently. Their learning styles will be different. They will need certain characteristics, and the skill for a parent, not about football, the skill for a parent is to understand how their child is different, because they're all unique and special in certain ways. And when they then come in to train here at your academy, it's trusting the people in charge and the coaches that they will be able to drag that little percentage that makes them special and unique out. And it might not be that they're the best player, or it may not be that they ever go on to have football careers, but their career will be shaped by those formative years, especially around the age of 8, 9, 10, 11, I would say. Those years, let them find who they are, let them find what their special qualities are. Trust your coaches to bring it out. Don't ask too much. Ask your child if they're enjoying their journey.
Brilliant. Did you just said you've learnt parts from your journey and from other people. Obviously, you're a pro license coach, and which will be really interesting for everyone on these podcasts. I want you to talk about opportunity on how you got the role. Obviously, you worked for Chelsea for how many years, Viv?
Yeah, 9 years.
9 years. And just takes back to how you got the role and what age group you started at with Chelsea.
Yeah, so at Chelsea, I was working at Cirencester. So I'd gone back to be player manager, and on the summer camps like there is now, like you've had here today, the summer camps at Chelsea Academy would be working with the age groups all the way through up to under 14. And I was invited in to do some defensive work. I'd been a driver part-time for them before. As I said to you earlier, brought Dominic Solanke in when he was 8 years old, sat in the back of my car. And so I used to drive him in, watch the session and take him back home to his mum. So I got the best of both worlds, if you like. We didn't have much conversation, but I give him a bit of stick about it now. But that, again, that's part of his journey. But for me, I got a call from Chelsea that an opportunity had opened up to be an under-12 assistant coach. Now, you've got to remember, I'm managing Cirencester first team. I know it's part-time, but they're men. I had some young...
And is Cirencester, sorry, Vic, from a similar level to Rush, like National League North?
Yeah, it's Southern Premier League, so lower than National League North. Yeah. Now it's lower than that, but at the time it was that. And Jim Fraser was the assistant academy head at Chelsea. He's a Swindon person. I'd obviously known him from Swindon Town. He rang up and said, opportunities open up. What do you think? And I sort of like gave it a couple of seconds. Went, nah, I don't think that's for me. And I could tell he was shocked because he went silent on the other end. And I went, yeah, I'm working with men and 11-year-old kids and da-da. And he went, well, do you want to have a think about it? And I went, okay, I'll have a think about it, but I'm not sure I'm going to change my mind. Put the phone down. And it's only when, again, another these sliding doors moments, you think to yourself, so later in the evening, I'm thinking, oh, what am I doing here? Like, this is Chelsea, with all due love of world, Cirencester, it's a bit different. And I was like, okay, I'll ring him back. So I ring him back. And he went, oh, finally.
Yeah.
And so it could have gone. That opportunity could have gone. And that's how it came about. I went in to work in a Tuesday night, a Thursday night, a Saturday morning, and games on a Sunday. That was the programme, with 11-year-old kids going from being on the sideline at a first team game, giving information all the time, trying to out players, developing, to 4 20-minute matches, and being extremely quiet on the sideline and only really talking during the period between the 20 minutes. Right. And that's how you'd give instruction. And then obviously loads of working and developing. And I was very lucky. You've got to have mentors. It'll be the same with the young kids. You've got to have a mentor that you pick up from. I was lucky to work with Cyril Davis, a Welshman, bless him, who still is on the staff at Chelsea all these years later in a scouting role. He was in his later years in terms of a coach, but what a role model he had. He had great empathy with the young lads, and that sort of harnessed it. I stayed 1 year with the 12s. I was given the opportunity to go with the under-14s after a year, again, was part-time. And I didn't actually go. I accepted the role. And then at the time, there was a change in management at the first team. Paul Clement, who was the 21s coach, who obviously went on to work with Carlo Ancelotti at Madrid and Chelsea. Paul had been moved up to work with Gus Hiddink, I think it was, at the first team. And Neil Bath, the academy manager, was taking the reserves, and it was the reserves, for pre-season training. And he rang me, I was on holiday, and he said, would you come in and help me for 3 weeks? People have put you forward who've worked with you on tours, etc., at the young ages. I said, okay. Because obviously I still had relativeness to the players at that age. I was still, late 30s. So I went and worked with the likes of Fabio Barini, Jack Cork, who's at Burnley, Ryan Bertrand, who was at Southampton, Chelsea, Gökhan Toure, a Turkish international, Jeffrey Brumo played for Holland. There was all these players. Liam Bridcutt was a player, a midfielder. So there was all these players, but they were like, when I first, so I flew over to go on pre-season on their tour. I didn't go in until the tour. And that led to me staying with that group for about, the whole of pre-season. And then Steve Holland was actually appointed, obviously the assistant manager, Gareth, and with Chelsea for years with Mourinho, etc. he was appointed and I stayed with him. But for 6 months, I was sort of not really doing a lot. Steve was very hands-on. I felt I wasn't being used enough, and I spoke with Neil Bath, and they had an opportunity to come to go and do the 16s.
Right.
So I went and did the 16s for the second half of that year. And then I got appointed under-18 coach in 2011.
And in that journey, just because you mentioned Dominic Solanke there, but obviously we spoke ahead of this podcast, what sort of players, for people listening, you're not one for a name drop, but obviously very interested in the calibre of players you've coached coming through, but the type of players that you managed to coach in those years?
Well, again, all of us that worked, in that period, the 10 years at Chelsea, that period of that decade was incredible for local talent, I would say, coming through. So you obviously had Dominic, you had the likes of Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham, Fikayo Tomori, Reece James, Mark Gurhey, and then you had the foreign influence of Andreas Christensen, Bertrand Traore, who obviously played for Villa. All these types of players, there's there was an English core that started to come through from 8 and 9, and that was the evolution of that group. I was very fortunate. I worked with top talented, Jeremy Boga and Charlie Masunda, Belgium and French were the best under-16s in the world. When they came to Chelsea, I had Charlie Colkett, who was an English lad who came from Charlton. The three of them were really untouchable at that age.
Right.
So very fortunate. Many of them have gone on to be full internationals, and everyone at that time should be extremely proud of that.
Yeah.
Of that period. But so many others, Bradley Collins, Jay De Silva, Casey Palmer are obviously at Coventry, where I've just finished working. They're there now equally as you're as proud as the work with them.
Yeah.
But it was a golden generation for Chelsea Academy. And I did 3 years of the 18s and 3 years with the 21s, as well as doing the under-19 UEFA Youth League. So the same as the Champions League, but of youth, which was a new competition at that time. And we were fortunate, obviously, to be in 3 Youth Cup finals with the youth team coach, winning 2 and losing in 1, and then back-to-back UEFA Youth League champions, which hasn't been replicated since. It's nice to be on a list with Raul at Real Madrid, who's won it, and some other very famous. But I was very fortunate. I had a brilliant team, in the first year with Christensen, Loftus-Cheek were in my team. So you're very fortunate in that first year. You really had to set them up properly and let them go. And the second year was all English team, which was excellent. And they played brilliant football, and it was a great time. I had a brilliant 9 years. Developed myself, developed players, saw the game in a very interesting way. Learned a lot about how you have to handle certain players, how the different challenges for parents, for players, certainly in the younger age groups, and when they training.
Touch on that bit, because it was super interesting when you spoke about you sort of say look past the pitch, but what you were speaking to me about before was understanding the individual, to then understand sort of how they would play or maybe interact within a group. So just touch on that for us.
Yeah, I think well, developing players is very different. The difference of developing a player to picking a player in a team is very different. There's a totally different contrast. Certain people are developers of talent, no, developers of people. So you have to understand that, again, every individual has something slightly different. So if, obviously at Chelsea, a lot of the players are from the inner city, and bless them, they have difficult upbringings, they have difficult lives. But how they would get to training would generally be from school, 3 or 4 train journeys to get to Cobham to train. So those trains are late, they're late. And if somebody turned up on the pitch late, is that the reason why they're slightly off in their demeanour? Do they feel like they're a little bit inward? Or are they very expressive? Are they becoming a little bit, unproductive in your work? what's that reason? And if you have to try and work out and have a really rounded understanding of that. So again, this is a really important message to a parent. Your child may be academically excellent, learn in a certain way, be shown 1 or 2 football drills and pick it up like that. His teammate who plays next to him may be a totally different learner, only learns from watching, observing, so it takes them a little bit longer to grasp it, but their home life is extremely different to your child's home life. So try really hard not to compare, because this player here has got a totally different environment to go through than your child. That's what makes that child unique. That's what makes that child unique. And you've got to try and understand. And again, for me, the best coaches, the best developers of talent and people understand both sides of it. They can have the empathy and the understanding to put themselves in the child's shoes and try and find solutions for the child, help them to then have a love of what they're doing, even if they're dealing with very complex, difficult situations away from the hour and a half they're training with your group.
So in terms of that, because we'll have loads of grassroots coaches locally and maybe academy coaches and maybe some professional coaches listening in. I did curve a course once, which I loved it for young kids. And there's a guy called Alf Galufston, and don't know why, but he offered me a job actually, Viv, and I didn't take that. But he spoke about the skill of coaching the individual within a group without affecting the group. That's what I've noticed in grassroots, that it can be difficult. Let's say we talked about game changers sometimes being a bit of a problem. How did you, even at that elite level, how do you encompass that? How do you do that for that one player without it affecting the whole group?
Well, for me, as you got older, if you're in the younger ages, so 12s, when I'm talking about the under 12s first going into that group, every player you're trying to develop individually within a group setting by different skill sets for each person. So you've got 20 in your squad, you've got to have 20 different mechanisms that you can go to, 20 different go-tos to get a response without making it seem like you're treating any of them differently. Right. So that's a skill as a coach.
Yeah.
Working it out. As you get older, as you start to develop into the 11 more, and the kids get through their growth spurt, game understanding, you have to work out, is this going to affect the individual if I now start to treat them in a slightly different way? For me, 18s, 16s, 18s, 23s, the sessions would always be driven to the 3 best players. They didn't know it.
Right.
But that's how because the 3 best players will take the sessions to the level you need to go. And then your players who are maybe will never reach that level, they will get as close as they can.
So it'll improve them.
Because the competitive edge then kicks in. That competitive nature of, I want to be doing X, Y, and Z. The best coaches can design development sessions that, as I said, that you do not know that you're working those 3 players, or you'll have a meeting with your staff. And today we're focusing on the relationship between the fullback and the wide players on both sides. So you're designing a session that moves very quickly through, and the players think they're doing a crossing and finishing drill, but they're not.
Right, okay.
So mentally, which players then can take that on board and handle that part of it and be able to thrive in that environment, and which players go, this is meant to be a crossing and finishing drill. What are we doing here? So they make it become a problem. The best players generally are mavericks. They may not be the best academic learners. They may have had issues at school. They may have very difficult problems at home. When they get on a pitch, they have freedom. So they express themselves in a different way to the others. And that's how you find unique elite talents, in my humble opinion.
Brilliant. I mean, in terms of that, like I said about suffering the game changers, he won't mind me mentioning it. One of the first kids I ever coached, Steve Hayward, you'd have had battles with, I think, when he was Fulham captain. And Vinny's just got a pro at Villa as a young player, and he was one of the most, if you want to call it, talented players, maverick as a young age. But that was definitely on my coaching journey a challenge, and it made and helped me grow. How did I sort of suffer certain things with Vinny without affecting the group and keeping Vinny engaged and motivated? One thing we do here, and I think a lot of, you talked about culture when we was having some WhatsApps there to come in, and you've clearly built cultures, Viv, and where you've been at Chelsea and then Coventry. And it's lovely to hear that sort of the deepness that you go into it, that you'd have 20 different challenges for 20 different players. Would you still have non-negotiables in terms of the culture? Like we from our partnership with Wolves, we focus on something simpler with the kids. We call it SLR. So safety, learning and respect are non-negotiables within the group, that we don't compromise safety, people's ability to learn and respect. Is there still things like that you've done in your coaching journey to embed the culture?
Yeah, driving standards is something that has always been very big to me. So if you work in, it's the one thing I think when you come from an academy, an elite environment. So obviously Chelsea is an elite environment. First arriving at Coventry in League Two, it wasn't an elite environment. Now there's many things for that. Coventry had some excellent players. Yeah. 4 or 5 of them were Championship players playing in League Two. Right. So the players in the main were there. There was a fundamental group of players. The culture, high standards, having high standards every day. I don't think you drop below that, or I wouldn't drop below that, because that's my go-to as a coach. That's my recognition that you appreciate hard work. I'm giving you everything I've got, every minute of every day I work with you. I expect respect for you and your teammates, the staff back, and I expect you to respect the work by giving it everything you've got every time you train. So I think culture gets set by that. I think sometimes, you talk about the Mavericks, but sometimes if a player or players go past that line, considerably amount of times that is affecting the learning capacity of your whole group, then people above my pay grade would have a decision to make on that. I think that, and it can sometimes go both ways. You can lose players. We had a couple of players at Chelsea that in the under-16s, one a French boy, extremely talented, unbelievable footballer, but the disruptiveness just tipped the balance. Just tipped it. And I think people above me, and I can understand why they made the decision they didn't feel that was going to enable other players in the group. You always have players in your groups that, how do you develop the best? So you look at Spain, don't you, in terms of Iniesta, Xavi, these incredible footballers, Messi, the size that they are, you'd never think, you probably think you could bully them, you can't get anywhere near them. But the reality is, they would have had players coming through their system that were physically powerful, which we did at Chelsea, that enabled that talent to develop. Right. Enabled it. They had visionary coaches, obviously, and they had people that they saw the game. You watch the Messi videos, you can see the talent at 7, 8 years old. When you beat half the team, it goes with it. But we had players at 13 that would go to European tournaments and beat half the team and score goals. They never got through to the level of Messi or even close. But the reality is, you do have sometimes to make big decisions. So I think you have to, as long as you get a general consensus, but you can lose talent. Chelsea, I can only comment on Chelsea, but every academy, you will lose talent by decisions being made that maybe a certain individual, and again, this one I'm talking about how you're putting children being entrusted into the hands of coaches or organisations or academies or not grassroots, whatever you may call it, to try and help them develop. There will always be questions around, is it a problem with the player or is it a problem with the environment? culture. Is the culture that you're asking for not being set by the staff? Question mark. Are the staff struggling to enhance what is being asked of the players? Because with all due respect to them, they haven't got the answers.
Yeah.
So you're in a very difficult situation all the way around. But culture, if you get the right culture, then it then gets driven by players. So in the end, at Coventry, obviously the culture then gets driven by an elite group of senior players. And that's how you get management groups. But you can do that with young players. You can give them more involvement. And the way I did it as Chelsea was I got players to review each other.
Right, okay.
So obviously we would watch a game, we'd play a game.
And what age was this? Sorry.
This was probably 14, 15. You'd get them in with a flip chart. You'd have videos around the game we played on the Sunday. What do you think? No blame here. 2 left backs, 2 right backs, 2 centre backs, 2 centre backs. No, everybody's here to learn. Open environment. Say what you think. Now, in their words, some of it was a little bit explicit. So there were some swear words at times, which you don't expect from 14, 15-year-olds, but they were trying to explain.
Yeah.
But because it was like, if you like, street versus street, boy brought up on the street in the cages playing football, boy brought up on the street, the way they talked, I could understand footballly, they understood each other with the words and the terminology. And that's the biggest form of learning. If you can be critiqued by your teammate, for me, I don't think I've seen anything,
with a constructive outcome,
anything as powerful as that. Still now.
That's something I'll really note in terms of what you've just said there, is if you can get them to self-critique and grow, you found that as one of the most empowering things you did in the academy. Yeah,
and we took that into Coventry. Definitely in the year where we were in League One, and Sam McCallum, who then obviously developed really well, came from Herne Bay and went to Norwich for $3.5 million, I think it was, and we obviously got him for a bag of balls and some bibs. But Sam's now at Sheffield United. But I remember his one with Brandon Mason, who came from Watford. The 2 left backs is one of the best bits of work I've seen. It was exceptional, critiquing each other with no animosity, obviously competitive, because they both want to play. But it's even more, at Chelsea, young players. There was a captain of the youth team below my age group. I watched the presentation. Ruben Sammet, his name was. He's now a head of scouting. He's got a really good role. So they drift in. I think that's what I'm trying to say. They find not everyone is going to be a professional footballer. You have to go into this, but as a parent, understand that your son, this man is now running a global scouting network. Right. He did a presentation to Gareth Southgate, came in when he was England under-21s, and the FA brought a delegation of coaches into Chelsea. They did some sessions with the younger players, and we had a Q&A with Gareth in the afternoon, and he spoke excellently, as he does. And this was the start of his journey. And that evening, Ruben Sammet presented to these coaches on how he learns at Chelsea. It was astounding presentation for an 18-year-old kid. It was incredible. But from that, I could then, when someone told me he's gone into scouting, I went, that doesn't surprise me at all, because the presentation was a level that you would be showing as a head of recruitment to try and sign a player, or this is why we're scouting this person, and these are the things around all the leagues in Europe. He would just put that together like that. So you fall into where you belong a lot of the time. Of course, there's lost. And I think one fear of parents, again, from nowadays is, oh, my child's going to be one of the lost generation. That's what I sense from a lot of people that are parents of kids, or, we want to get our kids developed as soon as they're walking. Yeah. And that obviously I would think that's a concern for the future moving forward for parents, for children, because you'll be asked to do something before you're naturally ready. Yeah. And before you've actually had a chance to have those formative years where you're just having a little bit of a giggle and a bit of fun and being part of a family unit, because being part of a family unit when you're 5, 6 years of age and you're training 4 times a week, I don't know how you're part of a family unit. I think so you'll lose some fundamental skills around your own development, personal development as a person, as a child. Learning basic instincts that you'll need later in life.
So do you, obviously we spoke, and I think you said as young as you watched, was it, or coach, was about 8 years of age at Chelsea?
Yeah.
You used to have that sort of mixture.
Yeah.
But when I said to you before, we have kids as young as 5 now that may go into like 2 different academies on top of grassroots, and they may miss their fundamental grassroots to go travelling around for academy. I mean, in your opinion, is that too young? Would you start it later?
I'd be concerned at that age about, if it was my own child, if I was in that stage now, I'd be concerned about, as I said, travelling around at 5, 6 years of age to get. But I think unfortunately it's the competitive nature of life now that you'll feel that you're always competing. Your parents were competing in the time at Chelsea. You have competitive parents, but again, the culture, the understanding, they were obviously in parent meetings where they were presented to. If we're asking for a code of conduct and culture and standards of our coaches and your players, we're asking the same of the parents, of you as the parents.
So even at elite level at Chelsea, they would really enforce that.
Yeah.
In terms of the parents' expectations.
Yeah, massively.
I remember them doing, you talk about that. I remember being at West Brom because we were a partner club, Mick Halsall, as we both know.
Yeah.
I think very highly of as head of coach. And they was doing a parents' expectation meeting. And when they got told that they had to go into it, I know the person pretended they were going in the toilet so they didn't get caught so they could still, because they didn't want to miss one session watching. So they didn't go into the meeting because they literally didn't want to miss the one session. And I spoke to them about, is that a problem? You'd have gained a lot more than watching Billy, we'll call him, for another week, doing a session in the Dome than going in and learning off someone of the calibre of Mick Halsall on the sort of parent expectations and the journey. So I think, like you said, I called it the parent trap, and that's not to be rude, but the race to the bottom's on. With life now, Instagram, which I know you won't be on, Viv, will you?
No, sure.
Instagram, everything's instant graphic. Like people see it as, tried to say the other day, like 180, I think, is the number of 1.5 million who go into elite academy, make the Premiership. I think that. So the good thing you've just said there, which I say to a lot of the kids I've been around now, from my journey and why I started when I spoke to you, Riley, when he left Villa at about 11, any of the kids who get a little bit older now, I always say to them, to be on the grass is a privilege, but pick 2 or 3 other roles in football, because if you want a career in football, you can have it, but the odds are you're not going to be on the grass. You could be, and that's great, but that privilege is not afforded to everyone. So if you want to be the nutritionist, or you want to be an agent like Clive, or you want to be in the media or commercial like I've done, like you've said, that must be just as proud as the England internationals or Solanke just on his move to Tottenham, where you said, I know you won't say it, but you messaged him and within 10 minutes, he's texting you back and thanking. To think a player who may not have made it on the grass has got a great career in the sport, in a sport we all love.
Yeah, I'm equally as proud as if there's some of the players have gone and played in the second division in Sweden. Some players, I've got a letter still in my coaching bag now from Tom Howard, who actually is the under-14s coach now at Chelsea. He didn't get a pro contract. He did his 2 years as a youth team, and then it didn't. He sent me a letter saying it was the best thing for me, because that's not. I wasn't strong enough mentally for that. And I think he went on to go to St Mary's College in Twickenham, a renowned college, and did brilliantly. He could easily be a teacher. So the fact he's gone into coaching is teaching, really.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, that point of what you're talking about. I think are parents prepared to be ready for if their child comes and says, boy or girl, mum, dad, I don't want to do this anymore. They could be 10. I'm not enjoying it. Are they then gonna say to them, no, you need to keep going? Because it's whose dream is it? And this is where you've got to be really careful. Again, as a parent, be careful. Is it their dream? Or is it your dream? Playing sport is brilliant for everyone because it obviously gets you out, all the health reasons as well. It gets you involvement. It brings you personality. It gets you togetherness. You form friendship groups, but it also can cause, situations where you fall out with people. You can get bullied, not being horrible, but you can because you don't fit in because you're different. Mm. So I think parents, if you want to get on the what do you call it, the parent trap. If you want to get
Let's
on,
call it the parent journey.
Okay, if you want to get on a parent journey at a young age, at 5, 6, you're saying now. By the time you get to 12, you've had 7 years of that journey. That child's had 7 years of it. Who's to say they're not going to go, I just had enough. Can I not go and, I don't know, try fencing for a year?
That's why, so I don't forget, you said it was nice that you said at Chelsea, they did encourage dual sport and doing different things within reason of what you could do. I look and I just obviously introduce you to my boys, 3 of the 4. I realised through that journey, I think about the times with Riley. I cringe a little bit now with Riley's early years of me being that drive home parent in the car. He knew if you played good or bad, and he didn't need me jumping on the back of it and being too much of a harsh critic. I probably over coached him from the side as a parent, where you just want to let him flow. And sometimes I look at it because I finished quite quick and didn't achieve what I hoped to in football. I had to realise probably halfway through Jude's and definitely with Brodie and Cooper now that it's their journey, not mine. And what's been interesting the last few years is I don't know if that's environment we speak about. We were talking about Brodie at the moment, who's my 10-year-old. I'm very lucky that Riley at 20 now has got 4 years of coaching as his oldest brother. He's around Ace 5 times a week. His second brother's an under 18 at Tamworth. His dad's here. I don't hardly coach Brodie. And Brodie's developed more in the last 18 months without me trying to coach him. So I think it's a key point what you said on the coaching of parent journey, that it's got to be that child's journey. Mm. And as a parent, we've got to be able to support and be that parent. And like you said, a balance, learning. My dad was the other way to yours. Mm. I never forget, we won a lot as a kid. I was in a team with Keith C, Lee Naylor. I think out of ours, Viv, 8 of us got a scholarship of our grassroots club. So you'd know that was a good team. But never forget losing one final in about 3 years and literally sulking. And for me, you know how big I was as a kid. I didn't even eat Sunday dinner, so it must have been bad. Mm-hmm. But I remember my dad said nothing. And it took to about 4 o'clock. And I went, well, Dad, how do you think I played today? I went, he went, well, how do you think you played? And I went, not being funny, I was S. And he went, well, you know how you played. What are you asking me for? But I never forget it. Like, he knew he didn't need to. No. So I think what's really good there is like what you said. Look, parents do so much good for their kids. There's so many kids now. I said when Riley went to Villa, how does some of the inner city kids get here? To get to Bodymore Heath from around the corner, like you've said, some of the kids are getting 2-3 trains. It's a lot on the parents, but they've also got to be able to realise when to step back and allow it to be that child's journey. Mm. And to relax to the fact that, I tell you what, I'll give Walsall a bit of kudos there with their community, their ethos. I never forget it was saying we want to develop better players, but most importantly, better people. And you've really touched on that today with me, Viv, that what you've done, you spoke about a couple of the young lads who've had careers at Chelsea, but I think you guided them by, they'd have probably been good footballers anyway, but you guided them on being better people, maybe as well as the football side.
Yeah, I think it was a big thing. That the Chelsea period had everything in it. Unfortunately, difficult moments, loss for players, which is very hard to handle. And you live that journey with them, especially as they get older. That's where it slightly changes when they're in the under 18s, under 23s, and things go awry in their life. They haven't really suffered loss, and they suffer loss, and they're looking at you as that sort of father figure, if you like, that can try and help guide them through. Well, I used to tell them true stories about my life, about difficult moments, about other people I knew, difficult moments, to try and give them a balance of, and show them a little bit of vulnerability. Because as a coach, I was obviously driving those high standards every minute of every day to try and make them the best version of themselves. But then them seeing that softer, vulnerable side of me, maybe your voice quivering a little bit as you're telling a story that, happened to you, or something that is similar to what they're going through.
Mm.
It was really interesting. And when I talk to some of them now and their dads themselves, they can really relate to that. So that definitely is one of my proudest things.
Do you know what? We spoke about that when in my younger years. One word was respect. So I spoke about you having that with the younger players and the older players also. But I think what you've just said there is being authentic. Someone down here who actually you speak highly of, being as he stopped you, was it one kick away from getting in the Premiership? Rob Edwards, lads, with us. But like we spoke there, you can see an authenticity in Rob's work, I think, in terms of that respect from the players, because I think he's open. He's open to them now. Back in the day, I think maybe coaching may have been a little bit different, but also I think as young as we coach, that authenticity from the coach to the players to place themselves where they were, I found that with the young kids. I have to watch I don't go down memory lane too much, but I never forget them talking about sort of in Holland, they'll have coaches of certain levels in the academy because they call it smelling the tulips. They say lots of people know what a tulip looks like, but how does it smell? And if you've experienced certain things that you can give them that'll help them, then there's an authenticity to it. I think that's really key for people. It's not just going to be football, has it? No. It can be in life, on a kid getting detention, coming to coaching, being disruptive in the first 10 minutes, identifying it, giving a bit of resonance to it, and letting them feel that you understand them.
I think the word, it's not just about football, but again, this is life. So you're talking about life skills for a young generation. The worst thing in the world must surely be if somebody says to you, what do you know anything about my life? ? How empowering and powerful is it if you turn around and go, yeah, X, Y, Z has shaped you. X, Y, Z can help you. I can do X, Y, and Z. The person in life or footballer in a trying to be a footballer or in a situation where you're getting help, that is you then being a role model in a completely different way. As soon as you show the person that you know something about their life, you've already got them on side.
Is this why you've always been, because you've always been a coach, or is it head coach, or so? Do you, just for you, because it's interesting to me, it's just come up, do you see yourself more as that coach developer rather than a manager?
I think I've
diversifying it. I find it interesting. I tried to give you the Walsall job, didn't I? But do you see yourself as that?
I don't see myself. I've always been a coach. I don't see myself I think when I went into senior, obviously the 7 years at Coventry, then of course there's pressure on somebody else, the manager, to win football matches. You're part of that structure. But for me, I could still see development in losing a lot of the time. You still see the bits. That's your coach developing work that you've done. So coaching is very different to managing. Is developing different to coaching, yeah.
Can I, before I forget then, 'cause you just made a really key point, and from your Chelsea, our teams run from under 7 to 12.
Yeah.
But lots of the teams and people locally will be listening to this. How much emphasis, if you were an under 10 coach at a high level now, would you put on winning?
That is the big debate, and that debate went on a lot. Look, if you're at a top end academy, a Villa around here, obviously a Chelsea where I worked, at under 10s, under 9s, under 10s, when do you win? I would throw the question back, when do you win? In development, you win tomorrow. You don't win today in development.
Right.
You don't win today at 7. You win at 17.
There's a statement to pass on.
So I don't think you win. You win tomorrow in development, in my opinion. You'll always get these, like the Lamal at the Euros for Spain, incredible 16, or, the Fodens you were talking about earlier, about Phil Foden and players like this. You'll have these players of a generation, the Messis I spoke about, the Ronaldo, You'll have these players very young at certain places, playing at 16, Jude Bellingham, obviously at Blues. You'll have these people, but again, at times, are they a freak of nature? Are they a freak in their brains? Are they just incredible talents? Yes, all of those, different reasons. But in general, if I was an under 10 coach, you'd want to see a group of young people, boys or girls, whatever you were coaching, playing the game with a smile on their face, having enjoyment, being expressive. If they then win a tournament or an international tournament, or they win a football match and they're happy about that, then great. But under 10s, you're trying to get as many of those players into a position that when it comes to the under 11 group, they're still a group in under 11 at 9 years old. Some will, unfortunately, this is what happens, fall by the wayside. Some will drift off into another place, but they may be happier where they go.
Yeah.
So under 10s on winning, I think you can worry about winning when you get to, the youth team. And youth team at Chelsea, our team on a Saturday in the league was basically young because the 21s were young. So my youth team would have been full of some 15-year-olds, 16, 17, all the 18s really were up, unless they hadn't developed quick enough and then they weren't going to be part of your group. The Youth Cup team was the best players, and then you're there, and you make no bones about it. Under 18 Youth Cup, every academy is there to win.
Yeah.
Champions League of Youth, develop players. It's the question, can you develop players through winning? Yeah. Winning a tournament. I mean, I can only talk about tournaments. So what do you get out of winning the European tournament? We got two things out of winning the UEFA Youth League. The fact that we'd been able to enhance Chelsea's youth development program on teams around Europe. So when we played the away games, you would go and visit the team you played. You would socialise, have a meal after the game. You would go and watch the first game in the evening because that's who you played. You played the same teams that the teams have been drawn against in the main competition.
So you went to
Maribor, yeah. So we played Maribor, say. Yeah. Maribor had never been in it. Our first team would play them in the evening. We played them. To them, to play Chelsea was an incredible thing.
Yeah.
Now, we dominated the football match, but I was more proud of the way the players conducted themselves around them. They didn't over-celebrate. They were just expressive in their game, and the difference in ability was there. But as people, that's the form. So you can win, but there's a way of winning, and winning forms development, because ultimately, when you get to the high level, the top level, you talk about Rob. So Rob's job is based on winning. He is seen as somebody who has empathy. All the players talk as though they love him. I think he's an explainer, so I can gather that he explains to the players why he's picking them, why he's not picking them. He's very steady in his ways. Russell Martin is somebody I know. I've just been into Southampton. He's somebody who does exactly the same. So the players are very clear. So you minimise what fallout you can have. But winning is a form of development because it develops you to be, I'm a winner. It gives you a different feeling. That hard work, all that preparation from when I was a young kid.
Yeah.
11 years later, at 18, from 7, I've now won. I'm a winner. So they tell themselves, and that can shape you in life. They may never win anything again. They may not be a professional footballer or sportsman, girl or boy, but they could win by getting a global contract over the line in the States for a company, or they could win by buying a house at the right time and selling it for 10, 20 times as much on the property ladder. And that enables them to build a portfolio business and they could be worth millions. There's many forms of it.
One thing from listening to you, Viv, which is great, and it's just something I was thinking because of me hearing you, and I know from when I was a young kid and coming, you've always had a really strong mindset, I feel. I remember doing, the events that I used to do, and one of the best ones I remember doing was with Gary Neville. And I said to him, how key at top level, percentage-wise, would you put sort of mindset? And I think he said something about above 85% at elite level. So he said to me, at the top end of any sport, maybe any business, any culture, that most people would either be talented, would have the attributes, but it would be that mindset, that attitude, and those marginal gains. You just said you must have had hugely talented players at Chelsea, and maybe players who were behind them but had better mindsets and attitude that drove them through. Have you seen that a lot? Would you sort of agree with that mindset's the king as well?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, look, I never played at the level that Gary Neville played. So talking from a footballing point of view, he would be the expert on me, and all respect to him as a player. He was a very good player. So that I don't know. I certainly know what it feels like to be in a youth group as a player, me, with players who had more ability. But I certainly had a better mindset than all of them. So that is why I got over the situation where I could have left. It's why we had 8 of us, a bit like you said, 8 signed pro with Swindon. I was the only one left there 7 months later. The rest had quit for different reasons around going to get a normal job and having money because our wages were terrible. But I had the mindset that this is what I'd wanted to do since I was 7 years old. I wasn't going to give up. If they were going to tell me it was over, it was over. So I know what that looks like. So I certainly had a lot of empathy with the players in my group that were in that 2nd, 3rd, 4th branch, down from the main players that you really could put your hat on were going to be, which is very difficult in development to say he's going to be an elite talent. But because people can be at 13 and they're not at 18, which has happened a lot. But I had a lot of empathy and could understand those because I'd had the same journey. So that I found that easy. I found that part of the job easy. And I think as it's gone on, look, in coaching, in senior, my job is to coach the whole squad. If that's where I'm working, if there's 24 players, I've got to improve 24 players. It's not my job. I haven't picked the team. So I have to have a different mindset, a different relationship to try and drive that. So as I said, I have to understand how they all work. You won't get it all right. And certainly I wouldn't sit here and say I got it all right. And have you had challenging moments? Of course, especially in senior, but still in young, the issues or the challenging moments are still there. You just get more. I've got more experience through the years of being able to possibly deal with those moments slightly better. And at other times, maybe not. And you have to think, but that's a chance for when you grow. And in the period I'm in now, where obviously I've got a bit of time for reflection in my life and my career, then you think about how can you really even more enhance what you do? Can you impact people's lives more? Is it in a different way, or is it going to be in a similar type of role? But not forgetting all the good work that you've been part of and all the excellent stories that you've been a part of and all these wonderful things that you can see when you go on social media or somebody shows you that, like I said, somebody
you go on social media?
I don't, but somebody I know does. So no, I don't. I don't have any of that stuff. But I'm on LinkedIn because that is a professional network.
Yeah.
I quite enjoy. And I'll see things on there where it's people I've worked with, could be staff I've worked with that have had excellent developments. People are now in different roles, doing things in different sports. You spoke about not becoming, your sons and that, about he could fall into 4 or 5 different jobs in football. I think it's the same. Reflection is really important. And again, going back to your parents, because again, this is what your audience is about. I pose a question to the parents and the kids. How often do you give yourself a chance to reflect? ? Parents, when do you sit down with your child and instead of saying to them, well, you missed 3 chances on your right foot today at 8, do you form a little game, a simple game that gets them talking about their feelings around the work that they're doing at your academy? Just construct it that it makes it fun, because then they relate to the game. It's like working at the academy. It's fun.
I'm not, you know what, Viv, that bit is absolutely brilliant. I always look at the podcast, so when I speak with people in football, it's about how I can, say, stretch myself or the academy. And for someone who's obviously been on the coaching journey you have at Chelsea and then Coventry, you spoke so much in terms of the words of reflection, growing and learning today. And I think if people can take something from today, give parents some brilliant information, the one about players working together. I'm already thinking of a buddy system between the kids. How can they buddy up, give reflection to each other, help each other grow with their learning? You just said to the parents there on what they could do. There's been some brilliant little snippets. Obviously, you've worked at the elite level, but you've made it really relevant, I think, to parents and coaches. Even if it's under 9s local league, they can take something from it. So I just want to say really thank you for taking the time to come to Rainy Rushall for us today, Viv. Before we go, I don't know if you want to do both, because obviously we've done 3 so far. You can imagine Wacker's name drops from his Tottenham days. I don't think one Walsall player got in his best 5-a-side team.
Oh, okay.
And then Cookie did one. But what I was going to do for you is to do it as a bit of fun for each podcast, is best 5-0 team you played with. But if you can, or do you not want to do it in terms of all the young players you've developed, best 5-0 of the players you've coached?
Best five coached?
Yeah.
Ooh.
In terms of names.
Okay. I wouldn't put a goalkeeper.
No.
So I've never liked goalies, have I?
No.
So in terms of players I've coached, so no goalkeeper, Reece James, Andreas Christensen, 2 defenders, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Mason Mount.
I think that's 5, isn't it? No, that's 4. Sorry.
Mason Mount and Dom Solanke. They would be the top 5 that I've. The ones I've played with. Glenn Oddle, definitely. Glenn Oddle would be in.
Was he as good as everyone said?
Yeah, he was Swindon player manager at 33, and God only knows how good he must have been at 23. He was incredible.
I've got someone who coaches who's a huge Tottenham fan I grew up as a Gazza and Robbo, but he's just like, it's Hoddle. But yeah, Glenn Hoddle.
Glenn Hoddle, yeah. I'd put Colin Calderwood with him, who was Tottenham, my captain at Swindon, played for Villa as well. In the Premier League, still playing. He was at 39. He's now Southampton first team coach. Colin was a brilliant captain for us. Those two. Midfield. John Moncur, Swindon,
What a
West
player.
Ham, Darren
He had less
Caskey.
pace than you and me, didn't he?
Yeah, Darren Caskey. So Reading. He was
Yeah.
at Tottenham as a kid. Unbelievable talent. Jamie Curran.
Reading.
Yeah, striker.
You're going to get driven out of Walsall. There's no Walsall players, mate.
Jamie Curran / Carl Lightwood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just because you kicked him that much in training.
Carl was lightning and Curran's the best finisher I've seen. Unbelievable finisher. So, yeah. Marshy will kill me for not putting him in.
Step over Keaton.
Marshy could manage the team.
Marshy could manage both. Imagine Marshy with the young
Not
lads.
manage the Chelsea one. He'd be having Freddie getting signatures all the time.
So Marshy can manage the ex-players, you'll manage the youth one.
I'll manage
How's
the
that?
one, yeah.
That'd be great. Right, Viv. I didn't expect to make it two anyway. Absolute pleasure. No, seriously, I think for someone of your calibre, obviously we've known each other, we've always kept in touch. But obviously your future journey will be soon, I'm sure, in football, and we'll all keep an eye out for that. But for taking the time to come and give us an insight into your journey and some advice for our parents and players, it's been a privilege. Thank you, Viv.
You're welcome, mate.
Top
Good
man.
to see you.
Thank you.
Top man.